Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of Knowing True Ball with your host, Brian Payne. Man, I'm so excited for this episode. This is going to be our first real episode. Those of you that watched the introductory, thanks, man. I greatly appreciate all of you that's already subscribed. And please show your friends, show all your boys, even the ladies. Hey, the more subscribers we can get, the more we can build this community and keep doing this regularly. So today, this episode, we're going to go over the NFC Conference. There's some news that's happened today, but we're going to worry about that on the next episode when we go over the AFC. So today, like I said, we will be going over the NFC. We're going to talk about my predictions for each team, how I expect their seasons to go, around the winning loss record that I think they're going to finish with, and talk about maybe their future and how I see the season going for them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it because I do not want to waste your time. So first, we're going to start off with the NFC West. The NFC West. And we're going to start off with Arizona. Last year, the Arizona Cardinals, man, they went through some hard things last year between D-Hop getting suspended for a few games and bringing in Hollywood Brown, trying to teach him a whole new system. And then, of course, Kyler Murray getting hurt, tearing his ACL, and then also we just saw that offense just implode. That Cliff Kingsbury offense, it did not last. It reminded me a lot of the Chip Kelly offense, and those type of gimmicky offenses just don't last. So what did the Cardinals do to change that? Man, they went ahead and brought in Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon, for those of you who don't know, he's now the head coach. He was the defensive coordinator of the Super Bowl runner-up Philadelphia Eagles last season. He's the guy that was responsible for putting those guys in places to make plays and fly after the football the way that they did last year. Do not forget, they literally broke a record for most sacks in a single season. Them boys was flying around. They were crazy out there. So we'll see how he can have that defense going, because it's not looking too good for him right now there. It's not looking too good because, I mean, with Kyler Murray going down, it seems like they're trying to do a lot of things to save the salary cap. And when you're trying to save the salary cap, you tend to let go of a lot of very good players. And letting go of these players are going to cause issues, obviously, for your roster. So with that being the case, they're really looking like they're starting to tank. That's honestly what it looks like. They're not going to say that, but it looks like that they're tanking. And with that being the case, it looks like they're trying to get the number 1 overall draft pick. And all of us believe the number 1 overall pick will be Caleb Williams, which is kind of conflicting and kind of crazy to me because they just paid Kyler Murray. They just gave him a long-term extension, a long-term contract, paying him big dollars. And you're saying after not even a year into that extension, because this year is his 5th-year option, so you're not even into the extension yet, and you're already going to part ways with him. That's a lot of money for that owner to swallow. There's going to be a lot of dead salary cap on their records and their books next year. It will hinder them from being able to reach certain free agents and all those kind of things. But, I mean, if they decide to go after Caleb Williams, that's what they choose to do. If he comes, that's for another episode. But so with that being the case, this season, for the 2023 season, I got them maybe finishing 3-14. Honestly, I don't really see where they win games at, but it's very rare to see a team go winless for a whole season. And those guys are still going to play hard because those guys that are on the field, they're playing for a job. So we will see how they go about this and navigate this season, but I do not see them having a very good year. It will be a long year for the Arizona Cardinals, and you cannot judge Jonathan Gannon on anything this season. We just got to ride along and see how things progress for them. So now moving forward, we're going to go to another team that's also shaky, in the LA Rams. We're going to stick with these two shaky teams in this division, man. The LA Rams, they're in a tough spot. So last year, the 2022 season, they finished with a record of 5-12. Not good. And 2 years ago, they were literally just in the Super Bowl. Well, let me tell you why they struggled last season. They struggled last season because they decided to go all in for that Super Bowl. They traded things away. They traded draft picks. They traded assets to get these players there, to get Matt Stafford there, to get Jalen Ramsey there. Honestly, those are the 2 big things that they did to get. 2 big-time veterans that they traded to get on their team. But when you trade those type of things, you give up your future. And also those players are big-time money players. When you're paying Cooper Kupp top dollar, paying Aaron Donald top dollar, paying Matt Stafford a good amount for a quarterback at the time when he got paid, that was top dollar, and paying Jalen Ramsey top dollar, like you don't really have a lot of wiggle room. And you can't really re-sign players. That's why Von Miller had to go to Buffalo to get his money. So with that being the case, I don't really know what direction they're going to go because they're a team full of late round draft picks. They're not going to have a whole lot of talent on the field, and their offensive line is the biggest weakness on that team, in my opinion. And with that being the case, I mean, Matt Stafford, who was never a mobile quarterback, who just had back issues last season, I don't know how long he's going to last or if he's going to make it through the season. So now the issue becomes, what about Cooper Kupp? What about Cooper Kupp, who right now is going through a hamstring injury in the first place, your number one offensive weapon? I think there's a good chance that they may be trading Cooper Kupp. They may end up trading him to get as much value back as they can because they have to start rebuilding their team. They cannot go forward with this roster. And it also makes me wonder about Aaron Donald as well. Aaron Donald could also be on the trade block, in my opinion. Now it's the NFL, it's not the NBA. We don't really see a lot of trading like that in the NFL, especially like big trades like that. But I don't really see why they would keep him. Why would you keep them just to lose games right when you could trade them and get assets back to help build your future? So this year I got them finishing maybe 4-13. Maybe 4-13. It's going to be a long, rough season for them. And we'll see what goes on with Sean McVay. He flirted with retiring a year or two ago. I don't know how long he wants to do this. So they could be completely rebuilding that team. And we'll see how that goes for them. But a team that did a masterful job rebuilding is the Seattle Seahawks. So moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, head coach still by Pete Carroll. The old man still out there getting it. Man, they went 9-8 last year, which was a very big surprise to myself. I did not expect that from Geno Smith. Man, trading away Russell Wilson, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but Russell Wilson was a good quarterback and is a good quarterback. And when you're trading a guy like that, it's hard to replace those guys. And so coming in with Geno Smith, and the last time we saw him with the Giants, he was not a good player. He was not a good player with the Jets. But, hey, you brought him in. He got to learn the system, learn under Russell, learn how to lead at a better rate instead of fighting dudes in the locker room, those of you that know. And when you got guys like a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett on each side of you, man, that's crazy. And then they turn around and drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba. This group of guys could be the best trio of wide receivers in the NFL. I don't necessarily think they are, but they're in the conversation. I think the Bengals are, me personally, but they are in that conversation. So when you got those type of weapons, and then you're bringing back a healthy Kenneth Walker, who I have not heard any setbacks about this offseason. And when he was playing before he tore his ACL, man, that boy was balling. He was balling, toting that rock. So now when you got all of that going on in your offense, you can hit teams from every angle, every direction, because you got different type of wide receivers. You got Jigba, who could be a possession wide receiver. You got DK, who could be your number one threat. And then you turn around, you got Tyler Lockett as a deep threat. Like, it's a lot of things to worry about. And if you can't put 8 in the box, which you cannot because you got to worry about those receivers, that's when a guy like Kenneth Walker could go crazy. And their defense is solid. I mean, they have a really good secondary. And with that secondary, and you add on now, bring in Bobby Wagner back. Bobby Wagner will truly help that run stopping defense. And when you bring a guy like that back, teams may not be able to run as efficiently as they ran on them last year. The defensive line, I think, is solid. They have a solid defensive line. It's not special, but it's not bad. But it's solid. So with that being the case, I got them finishing this year. Only has a 1-game improvement. But, I mean, in the NFL, that's a big deal. I got them finishing at 10-7 this year. And a team that I think that they will struggle with very much in their division is now the San Francisco 49ers, who are coached by Kyle Shanahan. Man, the San Francisco 49ers, man, honestly, they're the most complete team in the NFL. They're the most complete team in the NFL. The only guy that we got to concern ourselves about on that team is Brock Purdy. Like, what is he? I mean, we've seen guys that come in and have hot streaks as quarterbacks in their rookie seasons. Guys like Cam Newton, when he came in and he got to just ball out them first like 3-4 games, throwing like 400-yard games, going crazy out there. But as soon as they started getting tape on him, that stuff started slowing down. They started taking away things he liked, all those kind of things. But Cam, I mean, he's Cam, so he's a beast. He was still able to throw the football, but also he's able to use his legs. But Brock Purdy doesn't have the legs that Cam has. He doesn't have the physique that Cam has. And he plays a very smart game. Now, Kyle Shanahan may be the best offensive coach in the NFL, depending on who you talk to. So with that being the case, he probably will still put Brock Purdy in winning situations, which is very easy to do when you got a crazy guy like CJ McCaffrey in your backfield who could be used in a variety of different ways. And then you also got Debo Samuel on the outside who could also slide to the backfield. McCaffrey could also slide to the outside. Like you could use these guys, just get these guys the football. Their offense is predicated off of yards after catch. And that's the same with George Kittle. These guys, man, just get the ball in their hands and they can make plays. Then don't forget, Christian McCaffrey, I think, is going to have a very healthy season, but I think he will have that because he's not going to get the ball the way he used to. Because they got Elijah Mitchell. They can sub Elijah Mitchell in. He could take the rock a little bit so that it could preserve Christian McCaffrey to be healthy for the postseason, the most important time of the year for them. Now, a weapon that a lot of people do not talk about is Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, to me, is actually the best wide receiver on that roster. The best wide receiver, not playmaker. Debo may be the best playmaker on that team, but the best wide receiver is Brandon Ayuk. That boy, he runs routes better than Debo. He can run a bigger route tree than Debo, and that boy got very soft hands. He can catch the ball better than Debo Samuel. Watch out for him. If they can find a way how to utilize him in this offense, that's when this offense can become crazy. Crazy. So we'll see what happens with their offense. I think this is going to be elite. And then when you slide over to the defensive end, they got Nick Bosa once they figure out this contract and bring him back. Then you saw Hargraves from the Eagles. Man, when you get a pass rush from the middle, that's a big deal. That's what Chris Jones does. That's what Aaron Donald does. And that's what this boy Hargraves did last year for the Eagles. So when you bring a guy like that in to go along with Nick Bosa, and especially if they put them on the same side, man, that third down pass rush is going to be crazy. Then you got a guy like Fred Warner who could go sideline to sideline as a linebacker. And that's probably one of the biggest commodities on defense that you can have. And they have a really strong secondary. This team may be the most complete team in the NFL, and we'll see how they do. They finished last season at 13-4. I got them finishing once again at 13-4 this season. So to wrap up the NFC West, I got the San Francisco 49ers winning the NFC West. Now moving on to the NFC North. The NFC North, man, we're going to start off with the bottom feeders once again of the division, I believe. And I believe the bottom feeders will be Chicago, the Chicago Bears. They are head coached now by Matt Eberflus. I mean, we'll see what he got. We see what he is. It sounds like he has a pretty solid offensive plan. And what they finished with last year was a 3-14 record. And only have a slight improvement for this year at 4-13. Maybe 5-12, somewhere in that range. But that's not the important thing on this team. This team had a lot of glaring holes last year. The offensive line sucked. The defensive line sucked. Their linebackers sucked. Their defensive secondary sucked. The wide receivers sucked. So with that being the case, they had to do a lot of overhauling. And they have changed a lot of that offensive line. That offensive line should play better. And they will get better as the year goes on. But the biggest thing that they did, they brought Justin Fields, DJ Moore. So before we get to touch on that, we got to revert back to Justin Fields. So when he was at Ohio State, what you have to remember, he did not run the ball like that at Ohio State. He wasn't asked to, and he didn't have to. That's the difference. That's why he's running the ball so much there, because he didn't have wide receivers that could create separation, and the offensive game plan was terrible. But now on this team, this offense, he should have those things. And when you add a guy like DJ Moore, that guy is a true number one wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, he's not like one of the elite ones, but he's a wide receiver one. But also, we don't know if he's elite or not, because now this is the first time he's playing with a quarterback as talented as Justin Fields. So we'll see how that goes, because Stephon Diggs, we did not realize that Stephon Diggs was going to be what he was when he was in Minnesota. Adam Thielen was the number one when he was in Minnesota. There's a lot of people that don't even realize that Diggs was in Minnesota before going to Buffalo. And guess what? Josh Allen was that's all as a quarterback before Stephon Diggs. And Stephon Diggs was as a wide receiver before Josh Allen. But when you brought them two together, their game skyrocketed, and they became who we know them to be today. And that could be a possibility for Justin Fields and that team. The only difference is the Bills were further along building their team than the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears, they do got a solid wide receiver trio. I like Darnell Mooney as a number 2. Chase Claypool has a lot of potential. And now when you add in DJ Moore, running back situation, it's a little murky. But when you got a guy like Justin Fields, you could manipulate that offense and they'll have a solid run game. So let's not necessarily watch how many games they win and lose. Just pay attention to the progression of the offense and the progression of Justin Fields and DJ Moore specifically. And one of the teams that they're going to struggle with, though, is the Detroit Lions. And the reason why they're going to struggle with the Detroit Lions, because the Detroit Lions, one thing that them boys can do, they can run that football. They can run that ball. They are a physical bunch. They have a strong offensive line. Detroit last year finished hot, red hot last year. And they finished the year going 9-8 last year, the first winning season in a lot of years for them boys. But I think they kind of overachieved last year. And they have very high expectations this year. Now, they have talent on the offensive side of the ball. So they do have a high ceiling that they can hit, and a lot of people think that they will hit that high ceiling. But there's a possibility that they don't hit that ceiling. And if they don't hit that high ceiling, then that's when they're not going to be as good as a lot of people think they are. There's a lot of question marks on the team. They're just an easy team to fall in love with. So, like right now, when you look at Jameson Williams, is already suspended for 6 games for gambling. That's their deep threat. That's their one guy that could really break a defense going deep. And he will be an elite deep threat in the NFL. So now it's all on Amon-Ra St. Brown, who don't really play that role. His role is more like work between 10 to 20 yards, move the chains, catch the ball as a possession wide receiver. So with that being the case, I think their offensive passing game may struggle here and there, because also remember, they do not have TJ Hawkinson no more. They traded him last season. So we will see how that goes. But one thing they have a tremendous offensive line. That offensive line is crazy talented. And Jared Goff literally may not get touched. But the running back situation is a little murky to me. And the reason why it's a little murky is that I believe that Jahmyr Gibbs will be a better fit for them than DeAndre Swift. I think DeAndre Swift is a good back, very talented, but it seemed like he just did not want to be there. He just seemed like he was unhappy there. So it was never going to click there with him and Dan Campbell in that offense. But now when you talk about bringing in a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, if he loves it there and he's talented enough, a lot of guys are saying that he reminds them of Alvin Kamara. Remind you that Dan Campbell was an assistant coach on those New Orleans teams, so he knows what Alvin Kamara looked like at that age. And if Jahmyr Gibbs can hit that level, that's when they may have something special going on. And then to finish off with David Montgomery, they brought him in and let Jamal Williams go. I personally think that was a mistake, but that's what they choose to do, and which I do understand it. David Montgomery is a better receiving back than Jamal Williams, so you could kind of mix things up a little bit more with David Montgomery. But Jamal Williams was a beast at the goal line. A beast at the goal line. And David Montgomery does not have that same success rate as Jamal Williams does at the goal line. And when you score touchdowns, you get points. If you don't get in there, you get a field goal. So, I mean, that's a big difference to me. And that's where I wonder if they will miss Jamal Williams. So I actually have them finishing at 7-10 because their defense is not good. I think a lot of teams will score points on that defense, and that's going to be their Achilles heel. They don't really have a great secondary. They brought in some new pieces, but I mean, when you only bring in 1 or 2 guys on the defense, and your best defensive player is your second-year player on the defensive line, I mean, that can be a problem. That could be a problem, and there could be a lot of holes in that. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. But I think they will be competitive. I could see them even winning 9 games again instead of going 7-10. They may go 9-8, but they have a tough road. And one of those teams that could beat them because their defense is so poor are the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, their offense will still be elite. They finished last year at 13-4. Now I think that they got really lucky to get that 13-4. Like reminding you about the Buffalo Bills game when Josh Allen gives up a safety because he fumbles the ball in the end zone, and from the snap, not even the play, from the snap. And then Justin Jefferson going up top with one arm to literally snag it from the defender on like 4th and 16, 4th and 20, something crazy. I mean, there was a lot of luck going into their 13-4 last year. I think that will balance out. I think they will finish closer to around 8-9, 9-8 maybe. But we'll see how they do because their defense is going to be their Achilles heel as well. Their defense is not very good. I mean, they did bring over Brian Flores, but you're only as good as your players. If your players do not have the talent to do what you're asking them to do, then they're not going to be successful. And that's the end of the day. That's the end of the story. So I mean, we'll see how they do, but the offense should be able to put up points. I like Jordan Addison next to Justin Jefferson. I think that's going to be a good compliment. I do think he can definitely replace Adam Thielen and give them what they need from that more explosiveness. I do think they will miss Dalvin Cook. Madison, to me, he's not a breakaway back. So, like those runs that you may see Dalvin Cook get, like from 20-yard, 30-yard, 40-yard touchdown runs, Madison don't have that much juice. He didn't got the juice to get that, but he did. But he is a player that can be a good back, a really good back. So they're not going to necessarily hurt at that position. You just lost some explosiveness from that position. And the team that I think that they may struggle with the most would be the Green Bay Packers. I actually have the Green Bay Packers winning this division. I think they're going to sneak in there and win it. Man, watching this preseason, you watch how Jordan Love looked with that offense, because the preseason is not about the snap, not about the stats. Don't pay the stats no attention. Just watch the game. Does the quarterback look comfortable? Is he getting the ball to the right guy? That's the things that you need to care about in the preseason. And when I watched Jordan Love play, man, that boy was getting the ball where he needed to be, and he was in full control of that offense. He looked really good. I'm not saying he's Aaron Rodgers. There's only one Aaron Rodgers. I refuse to compare guys to Hall of Famers like that. But Jordan Love did look nice. He did look nice. And there's a lot of variables that you got to add into why the Green Bay Packers struggled last year. Man, when you talk about you got Christian Watson, your number one wide receiver, who was supposed to be your number one wide receiver, and he misses the first, 8-9 games of the season last year. As a rookie, he didn't get to really participate in training camp or anything of that measure. So, when he comes back, he's raw. He's very raw. He's learning the offense. He's learning where he's supposed to be. He's finding his way still. And then when you also have another rookie in Romeo Doubs, that's right now being your leading receiver, because while Christian Watson was out, a late round draft pick that's honestly even surprised to be on the team. The passing game is going to struggle. And when the passing game struggles, you're able to put 8 in the box. And that's what they did against Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones is the best player on that offense. That's a guy that they need to utilize as much as they can, but he's a little guy. He's a really, really little guy. So with that being the case, man, when he's getting the hit and taking that punishment, you got to watch how many times you give him the ball and let him go through that. But this year, the offensive line is back intact. Bakhtiari is back. That's going to protect that left side for Jordan Love. Jordan Love does have enough talent to get Christian Watson the ball. Christian Watson has been here for the whole training camp, whole preseason, all that kind of stuff. He's ready to rock and roll this year, and he showed that he's talented last year. Then when you got Romeo Doubs, when he comes back from injury, but he's been playing with them the whole time during training camp and preseason, so Jordan Love has a connection with him as well. And they drafted a nice young tight end. I cannot remember his name right now. I truly apologize. I do know it starts with an M, but I cannot remember his name. But he looks like that he has more juice, more about him than what Robert Tonyan had at that point of his career, because he has such a bad knee injury. So I think this team is actually going to be better than what they were last year, and that's why I got them going 10-7. And with that 10-7 record, I actually have them winning this division, and I have them making the playoffs. Moving forward to the NFC South. The NFC South is a very interesting division because honestly, there's no teams there that are really, really good. The Saints have talent, but there's no team there that you look at like, man, they get really good, but there's no teams that you really look at like, oh, they're bad. So we're going to start off with the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers surprisingly finished at 7-10 last year. I was very shocked to see that finish for them. I got them going about 5-12 this year. They got a new head coach in Frank Wright, who is really, he's pretty solid with quarterbacks. I think it's a great guy for Bryce Young to learn with. The biggest thing that we need to watch this season with the Carolina Panthers, let's just watch Bryce Young grow. Watch how he grows. Watch how the offensive line grows. And then that will tell us where this team is headed and where they may be able to be. And that will show us how good Bryce Young can be. Because one of the issues that they're going to struggle with is just their lack of weapons. They have a lack of weapons. I mean, when DJ Chark is your number one wide receiver, that ain't good. Terrence Marshall is your number 2 wide receiver. That ain't good. So we'll see how that goes. And Bryce Young's not used to having wide receivers that are not top tier. He's not used to that. So he's going to be throwing in very tight windows. I believe he has the talent to do it. I'm just saying this is a different field. It's going to take some time. They did sign Miles Sanders to help in the running back room. That would give them more juice, the more electricity in the running back room. He got breakaway speed. They're just going to be their success would depend on how well their offensive line plays. If their offensive line plays well, then they can be better than what I even think they are. But I think their offensive line is about an average offensive line. And then their defense, they have just a lot of young guys on defense. Brian Burns is a beast at the defensive end spot. But outside of that, it's a lot of young guys that have talent. I think they're about a year away before really being a factor, before being a playoff contender. As long as we see Bryce Young grow within the season, every week he needs to be better. As long as he's doing that, they'll be a better team for next season. But the next team we're going to talk about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, them and the Atlanta Falcons, which we'll get to next, are the most tricky teams to me in this division. This is why. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have talent on that team. This is still the same team that Tom Brady took to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and this is still a team that Tom Brady was passing the ball very well with last year. The issue was the offensive line fell apart, but they rebuilt it a little bit. And if they rebuilt it a little bit, we don't know how good this offensive line may be. Now, their starting center, he's out. They were expecting him back, but he's still out. So that's a big deal on Ryan Jensen. But Baker Mayfield has proven before, back when he was in Cleveland, that he could be a stable quarterback. When healthy, he could be a stable quarterback. You just can't ask him to win you games. There's a difference between managing a game and winning a game. There's also a difference between having the talent to win games and trying to win games with lesser talent. The Bucs have the talent. Well, you got a Hall of Famer on one side of Mike Evans, and you got another guy in Chris Godwin. Man, you have an elite wide receiver duo. You can make some noise with those boys. So we'll see what they end up doing on the offensive end. But their defensive side of the ball, they have one big key on defense, and that is the fact that they have two sideline-to-sideline linebackers in Levante David and Devin White. Those two dudes could disrupt the game and destroy a game by themselves. So we'll see how the defense pans out. I think their defense will be about average, but see, I also think their offense will only be about average or maybe just a tad bit below. So that's why I have them going at 7-10. And a team that I think they're going to just have a lot of tough battles with will be the Atlanta Falcons. Talking about the Atlanta Falcons, they went 7-10 last year. I actually have them going 7-10 again this year. But they're going to look good. They're going to look good. They're going to look better. I just think that they need a refresher on the offensive side of the ball in terms of play calling and things of that nature. Because they drafted Kyle Pitts number 4. They don't utilize him the way I feel like they should. Then you turn around, you draft Drake London, number 5, and you're not passing the ball like that. When you draft 2 pass catchers like that, those boys should be your head honchos, and they're not. They do not air the ball out enough for those dudes to be utilized. So they're players that they have talent at, the positions that they have really good talent at, are not being used accordingly. And that's why their offense tends to struggle. Now, what they did do, they did bring in Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson, now what he does instead of Tyler Algier last year, he gives you that home run threat. This is what I was talking about with the Minnesota Vikings. I was talking about Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. Alexander Madison can do what Tyler Algier did last year. Get 1,000 yards, get a solid amount of touchdowns, 6 to 8 touchdowns, and keep the offense just moving. But Dalvin Cook was able to take that thing to the house, and that's what Bijan Robinson could do. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be a great addition to their team. I don't think that's necessarily what they needed, but that's where they went. So their offense should be a lot better. Their offense is going to be dependent a lot on Desmond Ridder. How does he grow? But their defense, I like their defense. They have a really good defensive line. That's the thing I like the most about the Atlanta Falcons, that in the trenches, they are really good. Their offensive line is solid, and their defensive line is really, really good. They have solid corners, but I think they need to run a lot less man-to-man. A.J. Terrell is not a man-to-man wide receiver. He's a zone wide receiver. Zone corner. So as long as you put him in those positions to where he can read and make plays, more like cover 2s, cover 3 situations, and he can cover 4s where he can make plays in a zone, I think that's when he gets back to that Pro Bowl status that he was at. And they also signed Jason Bates. I think that's a big deal for them. You brought in a veteran safety who knows how to play this game, knows how to play ball, and he could really help that other corner that's going to need help and be very effective for them. So I got them finished at 7-10. But the team that I think that all 3 of these teams are going to struggle with the most are the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints, man, they have a heck of a roster. have a heck of a roster. Last year they went 7-10, but they went through a lot of things last year, a lot of injuries, a lot of drama, all those kind of things. But this year, those things do not exist to that level. And now, when you talk about now, you get Derek Carr instead of running around with Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Like the last time Andy Dalton meant something, man, was on in high school. Like Derek Carr is going to be a tremendous upgrade, a tremendous upgrade. And now Christian Olave, he could run that deep route and he could get that ball there accurately. And now also Mike Thomas, do not sleep on him. I know he's had a rough injury history the last few years, but let me tell you a little secret. He's in a contract year. When men are in contract years, they're going to come and ball. He wanted Derek Carr. They gave him Derek Carr. He's going to go out and try to ball so he could get one more contract before his time's up in this league. So please watch out for Mike Thomas. We will see Slam Mike again. He's coming this year. I think he's going to have a good season. And with those two guys, Christian Olave and Mike Thomas having good years, when Alvin Kamara comes back, that opens up the field for him. And Jamal Williams is there. I just got to tell y'all how good and how efficient he was in short yardage and goal line situations. So this offense could be a very good offense. I have them finishing 12-5 this year, and I have them winning this division. I think they will be a contender in the NFC playoff race. In the final division that we're going to talk about, that I know a lot of y'all been waiting for because there's a lot of people that are fans of these teams in America, is the NFC East. The NFC East, man, we're going to start off with the Washington Commanders. They are led by Ron Rivera. Last year, they finished with a record of 8-1. And I don't see them being too much better. And it's mainly because the road that they got is a tough road for their schedule. So I actually have them finish it at 7-10, and it has a lot to do with Sam Howell. We don't know who Sam Howell is. We don't know how good he could be or what he could do. And with that being the case, he's going to make some mistakes. He will make mistakes. And I think those mistakes will be costly because he does have one of the most underrated wide receiver duos in the league, in my opinion. Terry McLaurin is top dog. He could ball out. He's a real wide receiver one to me. And Jahan Dotson is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, in my opinion. That dude, after the catch, he could get those yards. He could get you those tutties. So with that being the case, man, he has elite wide receiver playmakers. And then he has a solid running game. I think Ron Rivera tried to create what he had in Carolina with Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. These two guys are a lot like them. Brian Robinson is Jonathan Stewart of that offense, and Antonio Gibbs is D'Angelo Williams of that offense. So, I mean, they can move Antonio Gibson around and things like that to try to get a little bit more versatility. But I just think the division is too tough, man, because when you got to play against these other teams, those teams, they are just better than them. But looking at their defensive side of the ball, their defensive line is strong, but the question mark is, and honestly, I think this is a question mark for their season. This could be the difference between them going 7-10 and maybe 9-8. It's Chase Young. Chase Young had a really good rookie year, but he cannot stay healthy now. And with him not staying healthy, they don't have that like crazy elite pass rushing guy. And without that, the defense is struggling. They are struggling a lot. So we'll see how that works out for them. So I got them finishing at 7-10. Moving on now to the New York Giants. The New York Giants, I think, overachieved a little bit last year. So I think they're going to finish about the same that they finished last year. That's what I'm thinking. So they finished last season at 9-7-1. I think this year they're going to finish at 9-8. And honestly, I think it has a lot to do with Daniel Jones. I think there was a lot of things that was created for Daniel Jones, and he has received a lot of hype. But he got a lot of hype just because he didn't turn the ball over. This is the first time in his career that he did not turn the ball over. So everybody's like, oh, he's really, really good. No, he's not. He's average. He's an average quarterback. He's not bad. He's not good. But because of that, he can't really play make. But they did bring in Darren Waller. And Darren Waller is a mismatch machine. If he could stay healthy, that could really boost that offense. Because when you got him working the middle of the field, then you pick up Jalen Hyatt in the draft working the deep part of the field, and then you also got a guy like Saquon Barkley in the backfield. That offense can do a little something. Their offensive line finally is pretty solid. So we could see what they could do. But once again, kind of like the Commanders, man, you're just in a really tough division. And those games you're going to lose. So I got to finish at 9-8. And one of the teams that I think they'll struggle with and actually lose both games against and actually lose their season opener is the Dallas Cowboys. Man, the Dallas Cowboys finished last season at 12-5. I actually got them repeating that record again, 12-5. But they are an elite defense. That defense is elite. Micah Parsons may be the best defender in the NFL, depending on who you talk to, depending on who you ask, depending on what kind of flavor you like. You like vanilla or chocolate. That's it. So with that being the case, man, I think Micah Parsons is one of the best defenders in the NFL. When you got him on the opposite side of Dexter Lawrence, that's a big deal. They got an okay linebacking core. I think it's just okay. I think that's their biggest weak point. So I think if a team can run the football on them, that's where they struggle the most. But they do have really good corners. They got a turnover machine in Stephon Diggs. I said not Stephon Diggs, Trayvon Diggs. And then they have a really good cover corner in Stephon Gilmore. Their safeties are solid. They are good safeties. They're not bad. They're not great. But Malik Hooker, he can turn that ball over as well. He could get hot and he could cause a lot of turnovers. So we'll see how that works for them. But their offensive side of the ball, that's where I think some of the questions are going to come into play. With Mike McCarthy taking over, I think that's going to mess up a lot of their explosiveness of their offense. I don't think they're going to take as many deep shots. So without them taking them deep shots, I don't know how well the offense is going to move. Because Dak threw a lot of interceptions last year. And I think a lot of it was because he was playing like home run game because Kellen Moore had him throwing bombs the whole game. So now switching to this offense, it can be very beneficial for Dak. But as long as the Dak don't turn the ball over, I think their offense will be pretty steady with Brandon Cooks on the other side. And then you also have Michael Gallup. You got two guys that can take them deep. You got CeeDee Lamb working the middle. So I think that can really, really work for them. And I think they have the potential. Honestly, they have the potential to win this division. And so we'll see how that goes for them. And but my biggest question mark actually is their running back situation. This is why. Tony Pollard proven to be a very, very talented running back. He proved that. He deserved his money. He got his franchise tag money. Now he gets to go out there and show what he could do. But the issue is that we never seen Tony Pollard play a full season. And he still got hurt. He got hurt last year. And he didn't have the whole load last year. And I think that people are underrating what Ezekiel Elliott does. A lot of people are thinking about highlights and how it looks and da-da-da-da. No, you need to watch football. That's why this is called Knowing True Ball, because we're about to really break this thing down. Zeke is one of the best pass-protecting running backs in the NFL. Without Dak Prescott having that other guy to help pass protection, that defensive end, he's going to get to Dak. He's going to rush Dak, which could force Dak to throw more turnovers. Tony Pollard can't do that. Now, Tony Pollard will be a better dump-off option. That's where he comes into play, maybe a little better than Zeke. But there is something that Zeke is elite at, just like Jamal Williams, and that is short yardage and goal line situations. We have not seen enough of that from Tony Pollard yet. So we'll see how that works for him. But those are my questions about the Dallas Cowboys. But I think they're a very good team, and they have the potential to actually be a deep playoff team. And with the team I think they're going to struggle the most with outside of that San Francisco 49ers is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles finished last year at 14-3. That's with Jalen Hurts missing, I think, 3 or 4 games. And this year I actually got them finishing the same, 14-3. Their schedule's a lot tougher this year. But their offense will be elite. Their defense is very young, but I think their front seven will be solid. I actually have more issues with their secondary than their front seven. But their front seven will be solid, but they're just young. They're very young, so they're going to give up more points than what they did last year. But the thing is that their offense is elite. They have maybe the best offensive line in football. And when you got the best offensive line in football, and then you got a mobile quarterback at Jalen Hurts, and then you turn around, you add a DeAndre Swift, and you have a Rashad Penny, what you going to do about that? Those dudes are going to run the heck out of read options and RPOs. And that offensive line is going to move that defense. They will move the defense. So with that being the case, they're going to be an efficient offense. They're always going to be on time. And then when you turn around, you add a guy like A.J. Brown and a guy like Devontae Smith on each side, like what do you take away? You can only play maximum 7 in the box. But now, you're leaving one of these two Pro Bowl capable wide receivers one-on-one every time. And Jalen Hurts is not proven to be able to pick you apart. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have a hell of a season once again. And I think Jalen Hurts will be an MVP candidate once again. And I got them winning the NFC East. So now, Now, I told you guys all about each team and what each prediction I think for their season will be. Let's go over the playoffs. For the playoffs, man, I got Philly as the number 1 seed, San Fran as the number 2 seed, New Orleans as the 3, Green Bay as the 4. Dallas, I picked them to have better records than New Orleans and Green Bay, but they have to fall down to 5 because of the rules. Because of the rules are set up, division winners get the first 4 picks, first four spots. So I got Dallas at 5, Seattle at 6. I actually got the New York Giants sneaking in at 8. And then after that, as you guys saw on the breakdown, I eventually got San Francisco making it to the Super Bowl. I think that they would have beat Philly this last season if Brock Purdy does not get hurt. I am one of those guys that believes that because the San Francisco offense was looking very good and very efficient before he went down. And once he went down, obviously the next quarterback went down, and we all know what happened from that point. So those are my predictions for the NFC this year. That's what I think each team is capable of doing and what they would do and what their futures look like. And I'm so excited for the playoffs. I think this conference is actually getting underrated. I think there's 4 teams, I'm sorry, that have a real chance of making the Super Bowl. I think Philly has a chance of making it. I think San Francisco has a chance of making it. I think New Orleans has a chance to make it. And I also think the Dallas Cowboys have a chance. So out of these 7 teams, I think 4 of these teams are true playoff contenders. Super Bowl contenders. And I would not be surprised to see any of them make it. So, man, I hope that you guys really enjoyed this episode. Please like it. Please subscribe. Have your boys watch it. Subscribe as well. Hey, and if you guys are willing to bless me, go ahead and share it as well. That would be dope, and I'll be greatly appreciated. Hit me up in the comments. I'll catch up with you guys next time. Knowing True Ball with your boy Brian Payne. Peace.